Lowell basketball. He is Nick Anastas. Nick, good to have you on once again, sir.
I'm good, LA. How are you?
Good, good. Uh, you know, before we get into the the playoffs, I wanted to ask you about some of the coaching moves or the moves in terms of terminations of some of these coaches. The most recent, the coach with Texans, David Culley, after 1 year. Uh, what do you make of some of the moves? Any surprise ones, number one? And if you were a coach and you were being courted, which would be the most attractive to you?
The two surprises were Miami and Houston. I figured that the Dolphins were moving in the right direction, having won 8 of their last 9. Um, with Tua healthy and under center, it seemed like that offense was pretty good in the second half of the season. So I'm surprised that Brian Flores got fired in Miami. And Cully, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I think 1 year is too short, no matter what happens. Now you throw the Deshaun Watson situation on top of that, where they're handicapped really in a major way from the get go. It doesn't seem very fair. In terms of attractiveness, I would say the Miami job is probably at the top of the list. Good weather, competitive roster, young quarterback. I would assume that would be one of the more attractive openings for sure.
What do you think Flores will end up? Do you see him getting a job right away? Um, and you know, one of the most bizarre and sad situations is a storied franchise with multiple Super Bowls, and that's the Giants. Were you surprised they waited? Mr. Mara waited and then fired Joe Judge, or maybe they have now someone that they're going to pursue heavily, and they needed to see if that door was open, and then they let him go.
That's a good question. It's almost impossible to tell for sure.
Right.
What I can say is that it seemed like the writing was on the wall there from very early on in the season when they stumbled out of the gate, and then just the way they closed the season too. Struggling to score 10 points. They'd be lucky to get 7 points, getting blown out week after week against division opponents. That kind of sealed his fate. So, in terms of the timing, I'm not sure. It just, the decision was inevitable that he was going to go. I'm not sure what the answer is there in New York. You could blame the market, you could blame the GM, you could blame the ownership, you can blame the previous head coaches and coordinators, but at the end of the day, it falls on the players. I mean, they spent a lot of money last summer. The Giants did, and didn't get any better. They have not drafted well, really, over the last 10 years. That offensive line seems like it's below average every year, no matter what they do. So they've got a lot of problems in New York. And to answer your Flores question, maybe that is the match. Bring him in, young guy still with some energy. Again, a good track record. Despite the fact he was fired, they still went over 500. He made miracles happen with guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick, and last year a stone cold rookie in Tua. So, it wouldn't surprise me if the Giants had Flores on their short list.
And some reports have been said if Flores was hard to get along with, he'd moved, hired and fired a lot of different coordinators, assistant coaches, and that thing. But what hasn't been said, along with these reports, is that he didn't want Tua. He wanted Justin Herbert, and they went and got Tua anyway. Whether it was the owner that wanted him or whatever the case may be, I'd be kind of pissed off too. Like, I don't. That's not my guy. Number one. Number two, that just clearly shows, if the reports are accurate, that you don't value my position and my input in the most important position on the field.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then it was probably not a good move to move forward back in April of 21 when they had the draft, or April of 20. There has to be, I think, some cohesion and some agreement in any franchise between the GM and the head coach, especially over, to your point, a decision as important as a franchise quarterback.
Right.
So that's if that were the case, then you could see the storm clouds brewing at the time. And that would certainly go a long way towards explaining it, because that is, I think, the most puzzling firing that completely caught me off guard was what happened with Flores in Miami.
Yeah, and he his tenure, he was one game under 500. But remember how they started? They were getting blown out their first two games their first year, rallied them back, and then winning seasons the last two seasons. So I mean, yeah, they're trending. They were trending in the right direction, as opposed to Joe Judge descending, if you will,
Right.
in the time, and making all these excuses, and how people want to be there, taking shots at the Washington Football Club, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What final question in terms of the coaches? What would be the least job if you are a hot coach and they're looking at Nick Anastas? Where would you not want to consider or go to be the head football coach?
Chicago. Very simple. Not a very good organization. Not a good place to play, after October 30th. Frankly, the city is falling apart. I would not want any part of the Chicago Bears job.
Yeah, but some people would say that it's Chicago, and especially with their football, as beloved as the iconic Michael Jordan was. Mike Ditka, they loved him, big time. Like he won that one title, and of course they say the '85 Bears, defensively at least, was the greatest of all time. So look at all that kind of stuff, from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sure, but LA, that was almost 40 years ago.
Right.
They haven't done a thing since. It's a big deal when they make the playoffs. And when was the last time they won a playoff game? And now I know they went to the Super Bowl that one year when the the NFC was weak. They had Rex Grossman at quarterback. They really had a great defense and special teams game with Devin Hester and Brian Urlacher.
Right.
But they have had a revolving door at quarterback, a revolving door at head coach. They're still living off the Ditka glory days 40 years later. They hadn't done anything in 25 years before that, and haven't done anything in 40 years since. So it's a cold weather city, bad front office. They don't draft well. I would not want to go to Chicago, period.
Mark, my co-host and producer, says, what about the Jacksonville job? And that's an important question, because, if Trevor Lawrence is going to be what people think he's going to be, you got a young quarterback in his second year. Whoever takes that job, you got a pretty good defense, and you got some pieces on offense that you can work out. What about Jacksonville?
And you have the number one pick,
right?
Again, right? And they have Etienne coming back from injury, the rookie first rounder from last year. Remember, they had 2 first-round picks, Lawrence, and then his teammate at Clemson, Etienne, who suffered an injury in camp and didn't see the field all year. So they've got some young pieces there. To your mention, that defense at least kept them competitive. And there's some pieces in terms of individual players over there. The conference is I don't know if it's the most competitive conference in football. I feel like you could probably turn it around with a couple of games against Houston. I don't know. Tennessee, I guess, is pretty good when they're at 100% health, but we saw the choke job that Indianapolis did. So it wouldn't be impossible to think you could maybe gain a couple of 4 or 5 wins even in year one in a turnaround if Lawrence can pan out. I mean, that's going to be the key with whoever steps into that job is going to be linked with the development and the success of Trevor Lawrence. So you're right. It is one of the more attractive jobs, given again the landscape, the division, the climate, and the fact that there's some young pieces seemingly ready to go on day one.
Yeah, and but you made a point too. Just to put a wrap on it, the organization's got to can't be dysfunctional. Number one, you got to be able to draft well. We've seen how the decline of Seattle and Russell Wilson, they haven't drafted well, and you see he's just been running for his life for quite some time through some drafts. So you can't be dysfunctional, and you have to be able to have quality drafts every year, even if you're not getting first picks. I mean, if you're getting first picks every year, then you're not a good football team and franchise anyway. But top picks. But we'll see how it goes. I agree with you about Flores, and I also think that there's a lot of good ones out there. I kind of stay away from the Giants right now, and the book will probably be out on Jacksonville. We'll talk with Nick Anastas, of course, of Anastas Media, voice of UMass Lowell basketball on the Batchelor News radio show on IBM TV. Nick, let's look at the matchup of the team that you covered, that be one New England Patriots. This is the rubber match, of course. Temperatures are going to be 0 degrees with lots of wind or some wind. Both teams are used to playing in this, but advantage Josh Allen because he's been in them. The young kid on the other side, he's a Southern boy, so he's not used to all the snow and cold and stuff. So it'll be interesting. I know he played in it, but remember, he only threw the ball 3 times in the game that they did win. So break down this matchup. What are the keys for New England to win, and what are the keys for Buffalo?
Well, I think the keys are pretty much the same keys we've talked about all year. They're going to have to be the more physical team. They're going to have to run the football. I think they're going to have to control the clock. There's been some talk up here about maybe going no huddle to try and confuse that Buffalo defense, but I'm not sure if that's the right approach. I would try to kill the clock and shorten the game. And if you can get away with throwing 3 passes again, then all the better. I don't think that's going to transpire. As you mentioned, the difference in the winds, really 75, 65, 75 mile an hour winds the first time around is a unique circumstance. I think it'll be windy, but it won't be anywhere near that windy to deter the pass. But they've got to play with the lead. They've got to strike first. Another topic this week up here has been, Belichick kind of authored the style of defer the coin toss and kind of set that trend where they receive to begin the second half. Maybe go ahead and flip it. Maybe take the football first, take 7 or 8 minutes off that first quarter clock. See if you can punch it in, take a 7-0 lead late in the first quarter before the Bills even touch the ball. That would take the crowd out of it. That would, again, give the Patriots the early lead that I think is important. So we'll see. We always know Belichick has a game plan. Defensively, I would expect a lot of pressure, a lot of blitz, a lot of stunts. I think they'll throw the kitchen sink at Allen. Because if Allen is allowed to, have time, the Bills have a lot of weapons. They can go underneath. They can stretch the field. They can get the screen game. That's one of the more dynamic offenses when Allen does have time. So I think the pressure will be big. The edge is going to be big. Matt Judon has to show up. He's played well all season. He's really got to have one of his better games, I think, defensively, particularly on third down. But if they have a lead at halftime, it's a low-scoring affair. where they have success running the football, particularly on the early downs, I think all those signs favor well for New England. If it's the opposite, if Buffalo comes in like they did a few weeks back in New England, the day after Christmas, where the Bills seemed like they had the energy, the Bills seemed like they came off the bus and were the ones ready to go. The Bills took the early lead, and ultimately Buffalo forced New England to play from behind, and that does not suit well for a rookie quarterback, particularly on the road in a hostile environment. So I think the first half, one way or the other, is going to tell us a lot.
That makes a lot of sense, and I do like that. Try to jump on them a nice 12, 15 play, 7-minute drive, and try to get it in. No, field goals. I think if you're scoring touchdowns and you make it difficult for Buffalo to get down there to score it as well, I mean, that's a win-win. Long drive, 7-0 lead, half the quarter's gone,
right?
And then you put them on. Then you could play, a different style of defense, maybe even stay in your lanes and your gap controls and be disciplined because, not only Josh will run by design and some he'll ad lib. So they got to be ready for that too. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Let's look at Wild Card Weekend real quick and get your thoughts. And starting with the Raiders at the Bengals again. This is the rematch. This is the second time the Bengals handled them in Las Vegas. It was close for a while and the Bengals pulled away. Bengals at home. What do you think happens in this game?
I think the Bengals whoop them again. I think I think the rest for a lot of the starters last week is going to help Cincinnati, whereas the Raiders obviously had that overtime game, which can be emotionally draining. Bengals are at home, and the Bengals are the better team. I think that offense has taken the necessary step forward this season. Burrow has shown the appropriate growth in year 2, where he's now a borderline Pro Bowler. They've got too many weapons on offense. Yeah. Now again, the Raiders I think would have to take a similar game plan as the Patriots, where they could establish the run game, grab a lead at halftime, and hope you can protect it in the second half. But again, if they're behind, they're not dynamic enough to be involved in a shootout and expect to win at Cincinnati. I think the Bengals win by 7, maybe 10 points.
The only thing with this game is, the Bengals probably have the worst offensive line coming into the playoffs, and the Raiders can get pressure with 4. If they can rough him up and keep him off balance, maybe they got a puncher's chance. But You cannot play. You cannot man press Chase. He will kill you. I couldn't understand why Kansas City, maybe out of stubbornness or just, how coordinators are, we're going to do what we do. Well, what you did, you got burnt like the whole thing. So, the Raiders are going to have to get some pressure with that.
Right. LA, the other problem is it's pick your poison, though, because you got two other good guys that are on the other side in one-on-one coverage.
Right.
T. Higgins quietly had a very good year, up around 1,000 yards. Had 5 or 6 games where it was well over 100 yards. So you want to bring an extra safety over on Chase, then you've got to deal with second-year pro T. Higgins. And then the other guy, Tyler Boyd, is one of the better possession/slot receivers there is as well. Tough as nails, runs any route in the tree. Good hands, good size, red zone target, etc. And then, the screen game is a factor, too. Joe Mixon is a 3-down back. So, as much attention as Chase deserves, the Bengals are balanced in other areas and can distribute the football when needed.
And we didn't even mention their tight end, which is really good, too. So, that
Zuma, right, a veteran. Yep.
Yeah. It's tough. Eagles at the Buccaneers. The Eagles run the ball really well. That's what their identity is. That's what they're going to do. Buccaneers are getting healthy now. I guess Fournette will play. They're getting a couple guys back on D. Mike Evans is hanging in there, and Gronk has been looking really good. Who wins this game?
I think it's the Bucks. Too many weapons, too much experience. Fournette back is huge. I can't understate that. The defense seems like it's healthier, at least along the front seven. Um, we'll see. I think Philly's probably lucky to be there, frankly. Um, but who knows? Because Jalen Hurts is an X factor. If they find themselves competitive in the second half, then I think all bets are off. The Bucks, as veteran heavy, as cool and collective as they can be, they have rolled in the mud with teams that are inferior to them.
Right.
We know about the Jets, we know about the Saints, and that's recent history. That's all within the last month or so. So if they are not clicking early on, I think Philly gains confidence by the quarter. And then again, if it's close in the fourth quarter, you got a guy that can make plays with his legs and Jalen Hurts. Then all bets are off. But I think probably Tampa gets back to what they do best: spread the ball around. Gronk probably has a touchdown grab. Fournette is going to keep him honest in the run game, and then if they can contain Hurts, who's not the most accurate, then if Philly's playing behind 2 scores on the road in the second half, then I think the writing's on the wall there too. A lot of these games, LA, are going to be determined in the first half.
Yeah.
I really think so, based on the matchups that for whatever reason we got here in Wild Card Weekend. I think at halftime, a lot of these games we're going to know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it'll come down to the defenses too. The Philly's got a nice little front who can get pressure, and Tampa's defenses stop the run. But this is the number one rush offense against the number one pass offense, Philly and Tampa. So I think the defense is going to be the key. A couple more games to get to before we run out of here. 49ers, Cowboys, the most intriguing to me because what the 49ers are going to do with Debo and with that running game. Cowboys, Jerry said Super Bowl or bust. What say you?
I think we take a long, hard look at Mike McCarthy if they lose. Fair or not, I think he's on the hot seat immediately if they lose at home in the first round. If they survive, then no matter what happens, I think he's back for another year. But if it's a first round exit, then Jerry might do something rash, so to speak. This one could go either way. I think the bookies have it at 3. Dallas by 3 in Dallas, so that means Vegas views them as pretty even. The Niners seem like they've found ways to win lately in the fourth quarter, the Tennessee game aside, which speaks a lot. I think it gives them some confidence. This is a group by and large that made a Super Bowl run 2 years ago in San Francisco. A lot of those veterans are still there. So I think that says something. And, they're playing basically with nothing to lose. They were written off early on because they got off to a slow start. I think they were 2-4 at one point or whatever. But they've got the defense physically, I think, to bring it to Dallas. You mentioned the run game. Again, it'll be, kind of a time possession battle that could favor the Niners, could go a long way for San Francisco if they win that time of possession battle. But then again, if Dallas comes out, again, indoor track, everything's fast. Dak is locked in. He's throwing it around the yard. They've got 20 points at halftime. The Niners, again, aren't built like that to come back. So once again, I think the first half is going to be telling between the Niners and the Niners and Cowboys.
Real quick, we're running out of time, but the last two, of course, talk about just happy to be there. The stars are aligned. Steelers at the Chiefs. I guess at this point, what do you think it'll be? Remotely close, or the Chiefs are just going to run away by 3 touchdowns or so?
Would you be mad at me if I said Chiefs by 24?
Oh, you heard me say I didn't ask you who was going to win. I said what do you think the score was. So reality is reality. So
34-10 Chiefs.
Okay, yeah.
I think the Chiefs come out and make a statement. I think that Super Bowl loss, at least with the competitors on that roster, is still with them. I think the Tyrone Matthews of that team, Even the Brian Neiman's, who's an underrated linebacker there, those guys went hard last February and came up empty. So I think there's some pride in that locker room, and they're going to take a whole different approach, I feel like, this time around. And again, the Steelers, an accomplishment for even being there. Again, hats off to Mike Tomlin again for making miracles happen. But I do think it's the end of the road. I think right. I think Kansas City, though, on paper is the better team, playing better football at Arrowhead. Primetime game, obviously. This one points to a big Chiefs win, but who knows? Because they've played down to their competition all year as well. I just don't see it this time around now that the postseason is here. I think they take a much more serious approach and they get an A+ or at least an A effort for Andy Reid on Monday night.
Yeah, real quick, Cardinals at Rams, rare, I guess, first Monday night playoff game.
Oh, that's the Monday night. Okay.
Yeah, and again, this is part 3. Who wins?
I think that's the highest scoring game of the weekend. It's going to be a track meet. Right now, I'd probably favor the Rams. If the Cardinals pull it off, that wouldn't surprise me. But for the sake of argument, I'm going to say 34-31 Rams in Los Angeles.
It could be that. Stafford scares me. So because of that, I think this would be the upset. So if they lose, I put them in the Dallas category. Maybe not with Sean McVay on the hot seat, but it's going to be some people in the hot seat somewhere, because if they lose at home with the way they put this team together unconventionally, not they don't have any draft picks. They gave all that for Ramsey and all these. So it's going to be interesting if they do lose at home. When they're Super Bowl or bust, in my opinion. 2 quick ones. Who do you think will represent the AFC and NFC in the Super Bowl? And recap as quickly as you can. Georgia taking care of business and the way they did, and the physicality of the way they did against Alabama.
Oh, you're gonna make me give you my Super Bowl pick now, huh?
I mean, okay, we'll hold off on the Super Bowl.
Yeah, let's hold on. I gave you 6 winners this weekend. That's
right.
That's all the crystal ball goes to. I will say this about Georgia: it seemed like it's tough to beat a team twice, right? If you're Alabama, a very good equal team. So Georgia, I think was clicking in the semifinals too, where they embarrassed Michigan. They brought it to Michigan. And they sent a message in the process, I feel like, to Alabama, who didn't stumble against Cincinnati, but they certainly didn't blow doors either. So Vegas had Georgia's as 1.5, 2-point, 3-point favorites, whatever it closed at. So I feel like the writing was on the wall there. But those 2 teams could play 10 times and probably split 5-5. So the fact that they split here, Georgia gets the last laugh, makes a lot of sense, and good for the program too, because they've been on the doorstep, as we know, really the better part of the last decade, and they finally get over the finish line. That's good for them. That's good for the state of Georgia, and obviously good for the university.
And talk about the Bears haven't won in 40+ years. I mean, Georgia, it's been since Vince Dooley won, over 4 decades as well, or something along those lines, 80 something. But yeah, so congratulations.
Herschel Walker was the Heisman winner, right?
Right. They beat and I can't remember if they beat Penn State or Notre Dame to win it. But anyway, it's been a very, very long time. So congratulations to them. Nick, as always, I appreciate you. Enjoy the games. And we will talk next week and recap and preview the divisional rounds.
Sounds good, LA. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too, man. Thank you. Nick Anastas, of course, of Anastas Media on the Batchelor News Radio Show. Listen, if you missed any part of the broadcast, make sure you come to IBM TV. You can get the rebroadcast of the show. You can also follow us on YouTube at LA Batchelor and Big Mind Entertainment on Amazon Fire Stick. Just download that app. You'll see it there. We're all over the place. iTunes, TuneIn. Follow us on Facebook at Pad Nation, Pad Nation #2 at Twitter, and the audio version of this at thebachelornews.airtime.pro. Thank you, Mark Lee. Appreciate you, man, as always. Appreciate all of you watching and listening. Tune in once again on the Batchelor News radio show.
What's the coolest thing about your job?
Engineers take the very best of science and technology and solve problems.
Did you know all that stuff when you were my age?
All I knew is that I really liked math and I really liked science.